Well, hey guys, thanks for tuning in to the Straight Outta Prison podcast. This is season 2, episode 7, and I'm James K. Jones, and this is my story.
And I am Haley Jones, and this is his story that has now become a part of my story.
The last one that we taped, I'm actually going to check that as explicit because there are like details in there that I probably feel like I don't ever want my kids to listen to that. At least not until they're adults. But over the past week, taping that episode has like taken a toll on me. That was so hard because you go through something like that, and you know, I know the end of the story. I know how it works out. But while I'm in the middle of it, that was horrible. And then, you know, I talked to my mom this week and I said, don't listen to episode 6 of season 2. And she was like, I don't listen to none of the episodes. So I was like, well, if you ever start, don't listen to this one, because that was the one where they tried to turn me into a prison wife. And she was like, oh my God, did they touch you? And I was like, no, we've already been through this. Like, we've already did it. But
well, I mean, I think it's good that you told her that. And I can, just from our conversations talking about recording and then recording last week and now what's coming this week, I mean, from my perspective, just living with you and being around you, it is definitely, it's almost like, because you have all your journals, which is unbelievable. I know I've mentioned that before. Yeah. And you can read them and kind of go back there, and you feels like in your emotions, like you even said before we recorded this one, you said, I feel like I need to record it so I can
let's get this one out of the way so we can move on. This was hard.
Because it's just so heavy, and it's just so like, but I mean, I have to say, I know I'm your wife, maybe it doesn't count as much because of that, but I just commend you for committing to the process of telling the story. And I know that it's hard, and I mean, it is crazy to me that I like know someone, much less married someone who walked through something like this. So,
well, honestly, if I weren't trying to be like totally transparent, I probably would have left this part out. But if I left this part out, the next part wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Like, I literally almost got gang raped, and these guys at Donaldson Correctional Facility, they were in love with me. They wanted me. Like, they wanted me to be their person. But for me, and the way that I'm wired and the way I'm made, you would have to kill me to make me do that. Like, I'd have to be dead. Like, I'm not doing that. I don't care. I mean, I don't care.
This sounds even uncomfortable to say, but when you said in love, I think, I don't know if they're in love, but they were definitely in lust, which sounds weird.
Whatever they were. I mean, we'll talk about this in the next episode, but there was a Bible story about Sodom and Gomorrah. And in that story, there was a person that lived in the city, and these people came. There were some angels that came down from heaven and were trying to like handle business. And they came to Lot, who was Abraham's nephew, and were like, tell them guys to come out so we can have sex with them. So, I mean, I felt like I identified with that story during this time. And I'll have a friend later that I'll tell you about, Dominic Glover, that we call Brother Love. He would always say, them angels trying to get at you. And
what does that mean? The angels trying to get at you? Because
in that story, in that Bible story, these people were trying to have sex with the angels. They were men. It was like it was the same. It was like this freaky, like twisted, whatever goes on in that situation.
I feel like that's going to be something we need to unpack later, because I have a lot of questions, but I want to stay on the story.
Okay, so. Well, we'll stay with this one. So in the last episode, I made my way to Donaldson. I was there for about 8-9 hours. They tried to gang rape me and turn me into a prison wife. And I had a plan where I was going to figure out how to handle my own business. But somehow in the middle of that, Jesus saved me and got me out of the situation. And it was actually the roommate, who was a sissy, who saved my life by going and getting the police. They came and took me out of there, and then the sergeant named Mad Dog and then the lieutenant turned it around on me and said it was my fault because I somehow brought that upon myself, and I just need to learn how to live at Donaldson. And I got very angry. I said some words to them that I shouldn't have said, But in the end, so these inmates became my enemies, and then the police became my enemies. And they told me they were going to put me in lockup to let me figure it out for a couple of days, let things cool off. So that's where we are now.
Yeah, so, and actually, really where we left out, which made me very emotional. I don't know why I don't know why. I mean, for obvious reasons, it made me emotional. But when you said you looked over and you saw that green Bible, that had been your Bible that you loved, and that you curled up with it and just cried yourself to sleep holding on to that Bible because you felt like that's all you had.
That was the only thing I had at that point.
Because you were in that lockup cell that was, 8 feet?
All by myself.
And with a little tiny window at the top. Like, that was very, whew.
And I was so confused. It's like, I didn't understand. It didn't make any sense. And there was like a part of me that thought like, well, Jesus, when I didn't have you, I didn't have these problems. And like now what's happening? It was confusing. I didn't understand. But the next day, like the middle of the night there, I remember like waking up at 2:30 in the morning, like with the police beating on my door. Bang, 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 bang. And they were hollering at me and they were saying it was breakfast time. And I said, what time is it? Like it feels like the middle of the night. And they said it's 2:30. That's when we feed breakfast. And I was like, what, am I on Jupiter or Saturn or Uranus? None of this stuff is making any sense to me. But what I learned from that was however they ran their prison, they couldn't handle, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So they fed breakfast at 2:30 in the morning. And so basically you slept half the night. You woke up at 2:30, you went and had breakfast, and then you slept the rest of the night, which made no sense to my brain because you know how I'm wired. Like
well, it really doesn't make sense, even logically, but
it's crazy. But that's what they did there. I'm pretty sure they still do that. They fed breakfast at 2:30 in the morning. But that was breakfast. It was like they brought me this little tray with their little disgusting prison food, and I don't think I ate it, but I drank the juice, and then I went back to sleep. And that was my first day at my permanent camp in the Alabama Department of Corrections, which was Donaldson Correctional Institution. And it was a disaster. I mean, a disaster.
So let's keep moving and talk about, so they said you're going to be in lockdown a couple days. So you said they woke you up at 2:30.
Well, the lieutenant said he would put me in lockup for a couple days till things cooled off till I figured it out.
Okay.
And I had a problem with that because I was like, I didn't do anything wrong. You're putting me in lockup with people that have done something wrong. I haven't done anything wrong. All I did was walk in here. And besides all that, you said not you said, but the Alabama Department of Corrections slated me to go to St. Clair. Why am I at West Jefferson? Why am I at Donaldson? It doesn't make any sense. None of this stuff makes any sense to my mind. And I'm so confused, and I'm scared. I'm scared to death. Like, I've never been this scared in my life. But this was what they decided my fate was going to be.
So during the day, what does lockdown look like? What did you get to do?
Lockdown, you're completely locked down in a cell with like 16 square feet. It's just nothing. You have nothing. There's no TV. You can't make phone calls. You can write letters. You have no contact with anyone. Basically, you can't go outside. You don't have a yard. Because like once a week they would come around and say, you want to go to yard call? And I did it one time. They like open up the doors, they shackle your hands, they shackle your feet, and they walk you around like this. I mean, it may have been 100 square feet. It was like in the middle of hell, like this little grass that was in the middle of this compound at Donaldson, where they would walk you around and tell you, you can just walk, but don't get close to the other inmates because 2 or 3 people will be out there with you. I think I did that one time, and I was like, I'm not doing this anymore.
So you were shackled hands and feet and went to that grass place because you were in lockdown. So not every inmate was in the shackles like that. Just the lockdown people.
The people in lockdown. But remember a couple episodes back, I talked to you about protective custody?
Yeah.
Like people that had like sex crimes, people that were former law enforcement or attorneys. or people with sex crimes. They would put them in protective custody because they would get killed in prison. They didn't put me there. That was where they could like move about and have their own little. They had their own little like space.
Yeah, they had a little more space than you.
Yeah, they put me in lockdown as if I had stabbed somebody and hurt somebody or did something wrong. And originally, the lieutenant wanted me to stay there for a couple days. He wanted me to cool off and let the situation cool off and then see what would happen. It was bad. I mean, they kept you locked in this little cell, and then you could take a shower 3 times a week. They let you out one at a time, let you take a shower. And you could do the yard thing once a week in shackles for 30 minutes. But I was like, I haven't done anything wrong.
Wait a minute, the yard thing where you could go outside was only once a week?
Yeah, it was once a week. And it was a disaster. It was like, I just don't know the emotions that I felt with that. It was crazy. But I made up my mind and I resolved. And you know me, when I make up my mind about something, I dig my heels in and that's what it is.
Oh, I know. Per our fight last night, I know.
Yeah. All right, we're in 1997. We're not trying to come into 2021. But I resolved that I am not living here. This is crazy, and I'm not living here. And besides all that, I was not slated to come to West Jefferson. They approved me to go to St. Clair. So send me to St. Clair and leave me alone. I mean, I'm not staying here. So they said the only thing you can do is stay in here and ask for a transfer, and we'll see what happens. And then they would come by once a week, and they would like ask you what your status was, or whatever the thing was. And you had to answer them every week, and it was like the chaplain, who was supposed to be a man of God, and a couple more COs, and they would ask you. And I would always say, I want to go to St. Clair, I want to transfer.
Okay, wait a minute. They came to ask you what your status was, like, meaning how you're feeling. How are you feeling? Like, what
Well, I was in a lockup cell block, and there were 96 other men that were in that cell block.
Okay.
90% of them were in there because they did something, like they stabbed somebody or they did something evil or whatever. I was not in there for that. I didn't do anything wrong. All I did was arrive. And the way that plays with your mind and the way they treated me and the conditions, I've never seen anything like that. And it was so difficult. And honestly, after we taped the episode last week, that was the hardest episode to tape because it was so confusing, so evil. And I mean, as we're going through this chronologically, like day by day or however we're doing it, or season by season, however we're going through it, the first one was very hard for me to tape, like talking about what we did, and then our first, like, being locked up. This was the worst. This was hard. I don't know. This week has been hard for me. I think you can attest to that.
Yeah.
I wish we could have just taped both of these episodes and been done with it. But it's like it just brings it all back to me and makes it so real. And I'm ready to tape this episode and be done with it.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just now thinking about what I just said, like literally 2 minutes ago. And I said, oh, you could only do the go outside once a week, which is making me think right now you're only supposed to be in there a couple days. So were you in there longer or what?
I ended up totally being in lockup at Donaldson Correctional Facility for 6 months.
What?
Well, they didn't give me any choices. The only choice I had was to figure it out. Like, they came to me. They would come around once a week. They had this little committee that came around. One of them, they would always have a captain, the chaplain, who was supposed to represent Jesus. We'll talk more about that later. And then they would have a couple of COs and like one like administrative like person. And it was to like check my status, find out what I was doing. And I was like, I don't care what y'all say, I'm not living here. Send me somewhere else. And in the beginning, I was in the cell by myself. So I didn't know what to do. I was confused.
And you were literally in that cell all day long. Never leaving it.
24/7. Unless I wanted to go do yard call, or they gave me a shower 3 times a week, which was gross of me because you know I'm about hygiene. But, well, you know, I gave myself a shower every day. I didn't care of whether they gave me a shower or not.
What'd you give yourself a shower with?
With the sink in there. There's like
there's a sink in there. Okay.
There's like a little cell with a slab of concrete that you put your mat on, and then you had a prison toilet, which was a metal thing with a sink attached, and then a mirror that you couldn't really see into. But I would just give myself a shower in my sink. I mean, I didn't know what to do. I was trying to figure it out.
Okay, so 6 months. My mind is blown. Like 6 months. That is crazy.
It was.
I mean, was it like where they just kept adding days, or you didn't know, or they kept? I mean, how do you go from a couple days to 6 months?
Because I said I can't live here. I'm not living here.
So then they kept you in lockdown because you said that?
Yeah, pretty much. So I found out later. Like later on, I found out like I shouldn't have said that because they would keep me in lockdown for the duration of my sentence. But then there was another problem with that. I found out during that time they didn't give me my time served that the judge ordered, which was almost 4 years.
What does that mean? Your time served from your previous prison?
That was the sentence. I got 2 10-year sentences ran concurrent, which means they ran together, which means that I had time served for almost 4 years, which means I only had 6 years to complete, which means that I could go up for parole and be done pretty quickly.
In 6 years?
No, parole doesn't work like that. Like if I had a 10-year sentence parole, you would get a parole hearing in like 4 years.
Okay.
I had already done 4 years. But it's just a twisted way the Alabama Department of Corrections works.
So they didn't count that 4 years. So basically it was like you were starting over there.
They never put it in. And I was writing letters to my lawyer from Montgomery, Mr. DeBarda-Laban.
DeBarda-Laban. I know some DeBarda-Labans. We've already talked about this.
We've already covered this. But he tried to help me, and it was just, it was complicated, it was twisted, and honestly, I've never experienced any kind of pain like I experienced during that time.
Okay, so let's keep moving forward. So you're there for 6 months. We know what the day-to-day looked like. What did you do with your time?
Well, you know, I was so excited about going to St. Clair and starting Bible college. Like, that was what I needed. That was, like, in me. Like, I need to go to Bible college. So I think it was my second or third day in there after they said, it's up to you. You decide. And I said, well, I'm not living here. And then they abused me over that. Like, who is this little kid from Phoenix City saying he's not wanting to live at West Jefferson?
You were sounding cocky to them, I guess.
I was angry.
Right, I know, but I'm just saying, like...
What happened to me shouldn't have happened to me.
I agree with that, but I can see how they interpret it as
coming
like
from
cocky.
The state of Florida, being incarcerated there, that would have never happened to me there. Like, there was nothing in them. They were not trying to help me.
Yeah.
They were my enemies. So the inmates were my enemies. They wanted me to be a prison wife. Now the police were my enemies. And honestly, the prison chaplain, Chaplain Lindsay, he was my enemy as well because he didn't care about me. He didn't care that I was stuck in a coffin there.
Why do you say he didn't care? How did you know he didn't care?
Because he came around every week with the little lockdown committee, and he always just, you know, just like, whatever. You know, let him figure it out. That's for him to figure out.
Okay, so we got a little off. So you said, yes, you thought you needed Bible college. You were excited about that, going to St. Clair.
I was.
And obviously that didn't happen. So you said about day 2 or 3. What happened?
I decided maybe this is my Bible college, and I just need to do it myself. So I had my little green Bible, and I had been given a life application Bible. And I said, well, I'll just use my time to study. That's what I'll do. I'll figure it out. So over the next 6 months, I literally took the New Testament apart, verse by verse, letter by letter, starting at the beginning and going all the way through to the book of Revelation with my notebooks.
How do you study the Bible? Because I've done some studying of the Bible, and I find it, well, very difficult. One, but like I always use other books and references and Google to look up words. So how did you do that?
Well, there was
with
none of
just
that.
The Bible. Yeah, I mean, obviously.
I just took the scriptures. I started, and I went through the Gospels, then I went through the book of Romans, and every verse, I took it apart. I looked it up in the Greek, the meaning, and well, I had this. I don't know what you call it, but like an understanding that the things that mattered to me, James K. Jones, in 1997, was the New Testament. Like, after Jesus had done what he did, and he had went up to heaven, the Holy Spirit came, and then they started, handling business. Like, that's where like the Church of Jesus Christ was born, and like the Holy Spirit came and like lit it up, and this was the understanding or the covenant between God and man during this time. So I was like, I need to understand that. So I literally took, and you've seen my notebooks. I've got like 20, I think it's 27 notebooks filled with the scriptures, where I literally took every part of the New Testament apart and studied it verse by verse. And so I thought, this is what I'm supposed to be doing now.
Wow.
This is what I would be doing at St. Clair. I'm a little less distracted right now, so I can just do my thing. So
Wow.
that's what I decided, and that's what I did.
Honestly, the discipline to do that too is mind-blowing to me, because I don't know, I can see that the tendency or temptation, if it were me or honestly most people, to just sleep, or I was just like, let's sleep as much as I can.
Well, there was nothing to do in lockdown. You have nothing. You have no TV. You have nothing. Like, you are locked down like just like an animal that has bit somebody, and now you just need to figure it out. So I would wake up in the morning, I would start studying, and that's what I did 24/7. That's all I did.
For 6 months.
Yeah, during that
Pretty
season.
much, yeah.
That's all I did. But like looking back on it now, that was my foundation. That gave me like an understand. I came to a place where I understood the Bible, where it wasn't all the stuff that people try to make it out to be. The Bible, from beginning to end, is the story of Jesus, and he was the lamb slain from the foundation of the world. It's like when God created man, he knew that we would go our own way because we were humans and we had our own free will, and I figured that out during that time.
That's incredible. 6 months you did that. So how did it
It wasn't just 6 months, it was a hard 6 months.
Yeah.
So imagine being locked down in a cell by yourself for most time. I would get cell partners here and there later on, but I knew that was what I was supposed to be doing, so I just did it. Every day I kept doing it. But it was so hard because nothing I could see made any sense. I'm locked up. They've got me locked down in a maximum security lockdown like I'm a criminal. I've done nothing wrong. The only thing I did wrong was arrive. And then I caught the eye of these predators who wanted me to be their wives. And I wasn't going to be nobody's wife. I'm not doing that. So, I don't know.
The whole thing is hard to get your head around.
It was hard. It was very... But I did. I made that my Bible college. And I did. I studied literally every word in the New Testament. I took it apart during that time. And, I still have those notebooks. I still read them. I enjoy them.
We've talked about this before, and I remember saying to you, and still think, how old were you at this time?
I was 24 years old.
So 24. So the typical 24-year-old is probably maybe still finishing school, depending on what they're going to school for.
Yeah.
Or working, or it's some kind of responsibility. You're an adult, right? So,
Yeah.
Some 24-year-olds are married with kids. But for you to be a 24-year-old and literally have nothing to do but study the Bible, in some ways, I know it didn't seem like this at the time, but was just this gift of time to be able to do that. Because even if you've never gotten locked up or whatever and still got saved, to be able to have that time to do something like that is almost unheard of.
It was. And I had that at Kilby, but I was a little more free. Mm-hmm. But now I was at West Jefferson, which is in the foothills of Bessemer, Alabama. Where Donaldson Correctional Facility is located It's like in a valley between a lot of mountains.
It is?
Oh yeah, it's hard. But in the summertime, I got there right after Easter. In the summertime, the heat and the humidity is so. If you had AC and all the things, you might be like you could make it through. But contrary to popular belief, some prisons and some institutions have AC and all the things that people talk about. At Donaldson Correctional Facility in lockdown, there was none of that. So the humidity was so thick that you could it was like you could reach out with a spoon and spoon it out. It was disgusting. It was nasty. It was so hard. And I honestly, at times I felt like I couldn't breathe because it was so hot. And it wasn't just heat. It was like heat plus humidity.
I'm from Florida. I know exactly what you're talking about.
No, actually you don't, because I'm telling you, I've studied this. Like after I got out of prison, I went to Las Vegas with my first employer. He took us to Las Vegas in 2002, and it's like a dry heat, but
Right.
in Bessemer, Alabama, it's like a wet heat. It's like humid, but you can't breathe.
I mean, obviously, I don't know it from a prison perspective because I've never been in prison. I can imagine that's worse because you're in a building and all that. But I mean, I have experienced the wet heat
Where?
in Florida.
No, that's not wet heat. No. Literally, where Donaldson Correctional Facility is located, it's like in between all these mountains, and it's like a little bowl. So the heat comes, but then with the heat comes this humidity, and it's so hot and so humid that you can't move. I've never experienced anything like that. And I remember I moved to Birmingham later on, and in 2004, Hurricane Katrina came through, and
I remember that. That affected my childhood home.
Well, that was very devastating for New Orleans and all that stuff. But, at that time I was living in Birmingham, and my first home that I bought was a townhome south of Birmingham. And I remember the guy across the street from me, he came out stomping. This was day 2 because we lost power. That's all that happened to us in Birmingham. We had some weather, then we lost power. But he came out in the little cul-de-sac there, stomping his feet and raising Cain. And I had the thought, bro, you don't even know what you're talking about. You can take your little ribs and your little chicken breasts, cook them, share them with somebody. Because what I experienced at West Jefferson that first summer, and then the previous 2 summers after that, if I can make it through that, I can make it through Hurricane Katrina and anything else that comes at me.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that.
It's crazy. But it was like hell. It was rough. For the purpose of the podcast, it's hard to explain.
So bottom line, there was no AC in your lockdown cell or in any of the prison?
No, well, it's funny you say that. The little cubes where the officers worked, those had AC.
Okay.
Nowhere else at Donaldson Correctional Facility had AC.
Okay.
We had a fan, a huge fan in the ceiling that would pull air. And then if they had mercy on you and gave you a fan, you had a fan, but they never gave us one of those. So it was pretty rough. But that was what I don't know. I was I had this weird, nothing made sense. Nothing I could see made any sense. But I just felt like I just need to keep going, keep believing, and keep digging. If this is where I'm at, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, then I just need to study the scriptures and just tear them apart. And that's what I did during that time.
Gosh, 6 months is a long time. Is there anything else that stood out to you, that happened or transpired during that time?
I think the biggest thing that was foreign to me was just being sedentary, just being in that little space for so long. Then I started gaining weight, and then if you don't ever walk around, what do you do? So I caught a glimpse of myself in a mirror, which they have those little prison mirrors that you really can't see yourself.
Right.
And I was like, Lord have mercy, I'm turning into a little fatty. So I just stopped eating any kind of bread that they gave me, and I started at least once or twice a day, I would do some kind of workout. I turned into, I don't care, I can do jumping jacks, I can run in place, whatever I need to do to figure it out, but I'm not going to turn into mush. Because, you know, like if you, well, like with your body, if you took your arm and you taped it to your side,
Yeah.
in 6 weeks, your arm wouldn't work anymore. It's just how our physical bodies work. And that scared the crap out of me because I was like, I don't know what's going on with me and how I'm stuck in here, but I'm not gonna succumb to that. So I just did things to make myself have some kind of physical activity in between. And then, you know, in the beginning I was there by myself, and then I guess it had to do with like how many people they needed to lock up at Donaldson Correctional Facility. So after about 2 or 3 weeks, I got a cell partner, a roommate, whatever you want to call it. And the first one that I got, he had been at Donaldson for 3 or 4 years, and he was scary. His name was Wayne, and just some of the stuff he said and the way he talked, and even the way he talked in his sleep was so ugly. I was like, what is happening?
And this is still in lockdown. This is your, okay.
So I had him for a little while.
So y'all are sharing the 8x8.
Yeah, he was like over me. Like that's what they did. They just keep stuffing people in there. Like we got animals and we just need to keep stuffing the animals in here. Mm-hmm. He scared me. He was scary. But he woke up because he would see me reading the Bible and ask me questions. And he woke up one day and was like, I had a dream that I fell into hell and I'm burning in hell. So I was like, well, you need Jesus. All you got to do is ask him. So he had like a salvation experience, but then he got moved out of there back to population. But then the second guy they put in there with me, his name was Jerry, and he was like this little young white kid from North Alabama, and his story was so sad. I mean,
can you give a tidbit of a story?
I don't know. I would just cry for him. Like, he had the same experience I did where they tried to make him into a prison wife. And he decided that was what he needed to do. So, and he was not like homosexual. Like, he wasn't interested in that. Mm-hmm. But he thought that was his only way to survive. So he like succumbed to that. He became somebody's boy. And then he had like this awakening where he thought, you know, I can't do this. This is not who I am. So he decided they wasn't going to be somebody's boy. And then they beat him up. And, you know, so he was a boy, then he was not a boy, and then it was no. But then he turned around and said yes, and then never mind. And then, so eventually, after like a year or so, he came to Lockup. And he was my cell partner. And during that time, like, I wasn't trying to, like, I was, you know, doing my things.
You weren't trying to witness.
No. I mean, I didn't even know what that meant.
Right.
You know, I'm only...
Witness means, for those of you that don't know, like, try to, I guess, bring people to Jesus by talking.
Well, I mean, I cared for him. My heart was broken for him. That was hard, what he went through. I mean, he was literally, like, raped over and over. But somewhere during that time, he had an experience with Jesus. He got saved. We started doing Bible study. But his story was very sad. But then he got upset with me about something I said. I don't remember what it was. Something I said to him that affected him the wrong way. And he was like, I got to get out of here. I can't be in here with this Bible thumper. And so I was like, I'm not a Bible thumper. What are you talking about? So he got moved out, and then I had the cell by myself for a little while. And come to find out, he moved in the cell with somebody else that was going to be his man.
Oh.
And no, it was just so sad. It was so, like, he was like back and forth, but he didn't want that, but he thought it was a way to survive. And then eventually he got moved to protective custody because something really bad happened to him. So I had a space of time where I was by myself again. And it was like during this time, so many things happened to me because I was studying the scripture, and I was like I felt like Jesus was like dealing with me about like my bitterness and resentment and unforgiveness. And I had some experiences where I felt like every day when I would try to pray, I felt like Jesus was saying, you know, you have to forgive your stepdad, my brother's dad, Mike. Like, you have to forgive him. And I'll say, I forgive. And I had this crazy experience one day where I was trying to pray, and I was saying that I forgive, I forgive, I forgive. And then I felt like I had a vision of Jesus where he was saying, you haven't forgiven, it's too deep. And I was like, but I want to forgive, I want to be free, I want to move forward. But then I got so confused because he died when I was 17. So I never got to face him and look him in the eyes and tell him what he did to me with my brother and what he did to my mom and how that destroyed us.
Now, sorry, I know have we brushed over this?
We talked about it.
So, but what you needed to forgive him for was for taking your brother.
Taking my brother and destroying our family.
Yeah.
I mean, basically what happened to him when I was 10 years old, he was my dad when I was growing up. Like, I knew that he was not my real dad, but I didn't even call him, I called him Daddy Mike. That was his name. He protected me. He was the one that I ran to when I needed help. But I was also scared of him because he was physically abusive. Not so much to me, but definitely to my mom. And then when my brother came along, it was like, we'll just figure out how to navigate through this. But then he destroyed us when he took my brother from me. And that pain was so deep. Like, I remember, like, the first year that I lived in Phoenix City, we were with my mom's sister, Brenda, and my co-defendant's older brother, Danny, the one that actually introduced us to meth. We were like 3 blocks away from home, and he said, hey, your stepdad, Mike, is here, and he's got your brother. And that's all I needed to hear. I got my brother. And I ran. I mean, I think I was like 10 or 11 years old, but I ran so hard and so fast to get to my brother. And when I got there, he was lying to me. It was a joke. He thought it was funny.
Oh, that's so cruel.
And I hated him. But the pain for me for my brother was so deep. And I think part of that was because, like, not knowing, where he is, who's taking care of him. But, my stepdad went off and had his own little experience with drugs. And then he started dealing with strip clubs and stuff like that. And so he ended up with a stripper, and then he didn't want my mom anymore. And he ended up marrying the stripper, and actually they had a baby and all those things. But for me at that time, we can talk about that later. But at that time, the pain was that was like my greatest pain was what happened to me during that time, because it took from me the one person that I honestly loved more than anybody in this world, and that was my brother. And I knew that I had to forgive, and I would say I forgive. But it was during this time when I was in this cell by myself that I had an experience with Jesus where he said, you haven't forgiven, but you have to. And so I was like, I'm so confused. I don't understand. Like, if I could have saw him and, like, told him what he did to me and what he did to us, then maybe I could have forgiven him. But I can't understand how you forgive a dead person. Because he had been dead by that time, like, for 10 years. Like, how do you forgive a dead man? Like, I don't understand. And it was this experience happened to me one time. It hasn't happened since then. But I had a vision from Jesus, and it was as if I left my body, and I was standing at the foot of his bed when he was dying of leukemia. And I told him, I hate you. Like, you destroyed my mom, you destroyed me, you destroyed my brother, you destroyed everything by your choices and what you decided to do, and I hate you, and I hope that you burn in hell. And then I said in this little vision, but I can't do that because of Jesus, like what he did for me. He was murdered for me. So if I hold on to this against you, it's like setting myself on fire. So I forgive you. And I did. I forgave him from my heart. And when I did, it was like I came back to myself, and I was there in this little prison cell by myself. But I knew that something had happened that needed to happen. And it was so strange. This forgiveness thing was so weird because there was some kind of wall that had built up inside of me after that happened with my stepdad, where I had no good memories of him. I had no good memories of his family, who were my family. I had no good memories of people in my own family on my mom's side. And it was just like, I forgive. And it just like took the walls down and I had like freedom. Like it was like, that had to happen.
Did you start remembering good things, some good things?
Absolutely. He was my daddy. He was my father. He took care of me, he protected me. He took me he took me to the circus. He when I was scared, he was the one that comforted me. He was the only man that was ever in my house that I've ever felt safe with. And I knew when he was there that he was
When he took you to the circus, he had to comfort you. Sorry, we need some humor here.
No, but sometimes...
Why did you need comfort at the circus?
Because I was scared of the clowns. But he would. I mean, and he was the one
When he took
that...
me to the circus, he comforted me.
I mean, these were just the memories that were flooding back.
Right, yeah.
Like,
yeah.
this was my daddy, even though he wasn't my biological father.
Right.
Him and my mom got married when I was like 2 years old, and I have no memory of my dad ever being in my house, and he was my person. And even though he wasn't perfect, I felt safe with him in a sense. Like I was always nervous that he was going to snap and do something stupid.
Okay, so I have to say, and this is like, I don't know if you want me to say this or not,
Yeah.
but like, it's so funny that you're telling me this now, or everybody and me at the same time.
Yeah.
Because our first year of marriage, I remember I never knew that Daddy Mike,
Yeah.
was ever abusive. You only told me the great things and said he was only, and so I had this picture in my mind, like this, not a fairy tale, but definitely like a good picture of who he was. Like you literally never told me that he was abusive or any of these bad things in any
I did
way.
eventually.
You did eventually, but what I'm saying is that it's kind of crazy.
Think when we got together in 2012, I had just connected with my brother.
Right.
And during that process, I'd connected with his family, his grandmother, his grandfather, his aunts. These were people that I grew up with. And so I was going through a process of like dealing with that.
Right.
And at this time in 1997, I was dealing with forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get to 2012 when we get there. I don't think we need to camp out there.
No, but it's so interesting to me that like, you know.
Yeah, but that's the true story of everybody's daddy.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, you worship, you love, you hero. My daddy's my hero. But if you're honest, everybody's daddy has issues. But his issues was he had an anger problem because I would find out later he was abused. He was very abused. But he was not so much physically abusive towards me, but he was towards my mom. Mm-hmm. And, you know, those are, you know, we'll get to that later, but those are like sources of like healing that I've had to, even in this year. Like I've had to deal with, you know, memories of something that happened that just shattered me. But being able to come to a place where I could forgive him caused a wall to come down to me that affected all my memories before that. I had no good memories of him or of his family, or even on my mom's side of the family, like my Aunt Barbara. Somehow I forgot how much she loved me and how much I loved her. I actually wrote her a letter after this and was like, I'm sorry I hated you for the last 10 years. I didn't realize till Jesus set me free. But let's don't get lost in that.
Okay, so you had this like open vision.
So there was purpose in this time.
Right.
But it would
happen during lockdown.
But it's so hard, like it's so hard to be locked up like that because you're like, okay, I'm trying to believe in Jesus and all this stuff, but like I'm in a bad place. Like this is not good. Especially
thinking of this day and age, you know, when there's so many possibilities and ways to distract yourself from whatever it is you want to be distracted from.
Yeah, there was none of that.
Yeah.
But then I got a second cell partner. His name was Jamie. He had been a runner for some time. A runner in lockdown means it's like they pick one or two people that can run like back and forth and give you stuff and handle, you know, take care of you. Because again, in Alabama, the police just stay in the little cube and they let the inmates do everything else. Mm-hmm. So this guy, Jamie, he was from Etowah County. He told me a story. He had life without parole sentence, and he said he was framed. You know, he didn't do what they said he did. He came to West Jefferson, I think a couple years before that, and they had beat him so bad that he couldn't see out of one of his eyes because they like beat him down and then stomped his eye out, basically.
Who's they?
The other inmates.
Wow.
This was a violent prison. This was not, we're not in Kansas anymore. We're in a violent place where there's no rules and anything goes. And basically what they said, the only way you can survive here is that you got to kill somebody or stab somebody, hurt them really bad, and then you can survive. And for me, that was not an option for me. I couldn't do that. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't even hunt. Like, I can't, if I had to go out and kill a chicken to have some chicken and dumplings, we would just have dumplings. Because, I mean, like, the violence and the blood, I mean, that's just not, I'm not wired. I can't do that. Mm-hmm. I'm not, and I won't do it. So that was where I was. But he ended up being my cell partner. He got in some kind of trouble and had to, like, move back in another cell. He told me a story. I didn't fully believe him, but I kind of believed him. You know, it kind of made sense that you got framed, you know, by the police in Etowah County. Mm-hmm. That's like Gadsden, whatever that is.
Alabama.
Yeah, but he, I don't think it was 2 weeks in, like I was like reading the Bible and so I was doing my thing, and he started asking questions. He got saved, like just like me. Like it was pretty remarkable what happened to him. But it might have been about like maybe a month in. One night, I think he woke me up. And he was like, I feel like I need to tell you something. So I was like, okay. You know, whatever. But he basically felt like that he had all this conviction and he needed to tell somebody the truth of why he was here. And he confessed murder to me in a set, like a 8-10 square. I don't know the square footage, but it's very small.
8x8 originally.
Well, he was on one part and I was over him. And he decided that he needed to tell me what really happened and how he got here. And he committed a double murder for no reason. Him and a guy were out, and he was married, and he didn't have kids, but he had stepkids. And they were out, and they were drinking and doing their thing. And his friend raped some girl. He said he didn't understand what happened, but he raped her. And he said all that was going through his mind was that if his wife found out, he was going to be in a lot of trouble. So she was there, and then another guy was there.
Who was she?
This girl that they killed.
Oh, that his friend raped?
Yes. She was in like a truck. So he didn't know what to do, so he picked up a wrench and basically beat the brains out of the guy with it. They left his body there. Then they rode around in the truck, him and his friend, for like 4 hours with this girl. And she knew that they were going to kill her. And they took her out in the woods and killed her.
Holy.
And I was like, why are you telling me? And he was like, I feel like I need to make a confession now that I have this Jesus. Like I need to tell the truth. So, and he had a life without parole sentence, which meant that he would never get out of prison. And I was scared to death. I was like, I don't know what's happening here, but, you know, Jesus, you can deal with stuff like this, but James K. Jones.
I'm going to tap out.
This is not, no, I mean, I didn't understand. I was scared and I was confused, but he confessed murder to me, and apparently I was the first person he ever confessed the truth to. And from what I understand, he'll never get out of prison.
Yeah.
I mean, they murdered 2 people for no reason. And he kind of told me a story later on, like he'd always been into evil stuff. And I just, I was like, how am I here? How am I here with this person? And I remember that night I fell asleep and I couldn't sleep because I would wake up dreaming of blood and murder. And it didn't make any sense. But I didn't know what to do. So I think after that, like I couldn't be like sincere with him after that. Even though, you know, I believe his experience with Jesus was real and I believe he got forgiveness. It's like, how you going to kill people for no reason? And then, like, why you got to confess to me? Like, confess to chaplain or something. Confess to somebody else. Like, I can't. And I got to live in the room with it. Didn't make any sense. this season of my life was one of the hardest ones I've ever had to walk through. And I got to the end of, my Bible college that I was, my self-taught Bible college that I was doing, and had literally taken apart the whole New Testament, was getting ready to study the book of Revelation, which is the last book of the Bible. And I felt like Jesus said, you can read that, but don't study it. Only thing you need to know about the book of Revelation is that I win, so you win. So
Real quick, when you say he told you that, because this is something that you reference a lot, like you say, like, oh, and then Jesus said, and then I said, and then Jesus.
yeah, well,
how did you hear that?
I don't know that Jesus like talks to me like inaudible. It's just like a knowing, like a sense, like when you get still and you get quiet. And in this, I had a lot of stillness and quietness during this time. So I mean, I was able to hear a lot more than there was no distractions.
Right. Yeah, we talked about that.
So it's not like like I got some kind of special gift. We all have. We can hear his voice if we'll be quiet long enough to hear it. I mean, I believe that.
Yeah.
Well, if he lives in you, you hear his voice.
So in your stillness, you were just sure that you weren't supposed to study any further Revelation.
No. And
book.
If you're not familiar with the Bible, the book of Revelation is just a revealing of the end times. And people go crazy over that book. And especially in prison, there are a lot of crazy people.
They go crazy what? What does that mean?
Just reading it, trying to figure it out. And, they've been doing that for 2,000 years. And not just people in prison go crazy, but there are people out here that go crazy over that book too.
They made a movie. I remember, I think I was a teenager or maybe in middle school.
Left Behind.
Left Behind. Yes, it was like a book series. And they made a movie and it was like, holy cow, I need to get my you-know-what together.
I never watched that movie because it's so silly, like trying to figure out. Like you can't, it's like the people trying to figure out when Jesus was going to be born. He got born and was there, and nobody even knew he was there because they had it all figured out. So I don't think God is going to let us figure things out.
Well, sorry, I didn't want to get distracted. I just thought of that. So you weren't supposed to study that. So then what?
So I didn't know what to do. I got restless. I went through probably about a month. There was a lot of things that happened. This was the fall of 1997. I don't know if you remember this, but Princess Diana. She got killed in a car wreck.
Oh, I've always been fascinated with her. Yes, I do remember that.
And I just remember, like, being sad because, like, I couldn't watch the news or I couldn't, I was isolated from the world. We didn't have TV, we didn't have nothing. Mm-hmm. And then probably the saddest thing that happened to me during that time was my granddaddy passed away. And I had to find that out through the mail, through a letter. And that hurt for my granny and for my dad and my family, my Aunt Glennis, everybody. And it was hard enough not being there for that, but then being able to have zero communication because we couldn't use the phone. So that was tough. This was just a tough season. And honestly, I'll be glad when we get done with this one so we can move on because these last two have been hard to record. But I got to the end of that and got a little restless, and I had found a scripture that I felt like it was telling my story in the book of Jeremiah in the Old Testament, and it was in reference to the nation of Israel when they got carried away captive into Babylon. And in many ways, I felt like, I got carried away captive into Donaldson or prison, but because of my own choices, don't get me wrong. I put myself there, but I was carried away captive just like they were carried away captive. And in this chapter, the prophet Jeremiah was like giving them the words of Jesus. And he basically said, you're going to be here for a season, but after you're here, if you will look for me, you'll find me. Because I have a good plan for you. I know the plans I have for you, plans for peace and not for destruction, to give you a future and a hope. And if you look for me and search for me with your whole heart, you'll find me, and I'll get you out of this mess. And I took that personal. That became like, okay, I got carried away captive because I was being a criminal and being a retard, all the stupid things that I was doing. But Jesus decided to still had a plan, wanted to help me. And I believed it. And it wasn't long after that I found all I did was read my Bible. I didn't have anything else to do and write and stuff. But I kind of felt like I was starting to lose my mind a little bit because, you get.
Well, gosh, yeah, you were, 6 months in at that point?
It was six, it was a little, I don't know the exact time, but it was 6 months-ish.
Yeah.
And it had been over 6 months at that time. And I came to a realization they're not going to give me a transfer. They're going to, they will literally, I knew people that were in there had been locked up in there for years. And I just didn't see how you could survive that. I mean, come out of that with your mind intact.
Yeah.
Because it's just hard. That was so hard. But I was too afraid to try to live there. I knew that. But I found one night there was one of those Bible verses that jumped off at me. And it was where Jesus, he was talking to me through the word. And he said, this was in the Gospel of John, "You didn't choose me, I chose you. And I set you aside apart. And I have a plan for you. And you got to trust me."
But the thing that stood out to you was that you didn't choose him, he chose you.
Yeah, that was one of the most real things that I've ever gotten clearly to understand. It was real, it was powerful and real. But then
What made that so powerful for you?
it was the way it jumped. It was as if he was speaking it directly to me. It was not, I was reading it in the Bible. It was like, this is for you. I'm talking to you, boy. You didn't choose me, I chose you. And I set you apart, and I have a plan for you. But now you got to trust me. And so I was like, well, I trust you, whatever, whatever we need to do.
Whatever.
Here I am. I trust you. And I think it was the very next day I was praying, and I felt like he said, "You're going to be my man in Birmingham." And I was like, Birmingham? Because there ain't nothing for me. I want Birmingham.
You had never lived in Birmingham before?
No, my dad did, but I only had bad memories of Birmingham because my mom used to force me to get on a Greyhound bus and ride it for 4 hours and come up to Birmingham to see him. And I didn't like anything about it, but it was because of that experience. But that was weird. And I was like, well, how do you get from lockdown cell to Birmingham? I don't know. Didn't make any sense.
And then you thought you were going to be the man in Birmingham.
Well, he said I'd be his man in Birmingham.
Oh, his man in Birmingham.
Yeah.
The man, his man.
Not the man. His man. I mean, but it was clear. I mean, it's in my notebook. I mean,
yeah.
It's I'm not making it up. But it made no sense to my mind. But I just was like, oh, okay. I mean, how are we going to make that happen? But he said, I have something for you here. And the only way to conquer your fear is to go through. The only way out is through. And so I came to a realization that I was going to have to accept that I was going to have to live at Donaldson Correctional Facility. And that was scary and it was hard and I didn't know what would happen to me. But he was saying, I just need you to trust me.
It's so crazy because you're talking about this, in context of obviously your experience in prison and feeling, I guess, stuck and afraid and not knowing what was next and things weren't making sense. But I can just think of, even as you're talking, times that I have felt that exact same way, not in prison, just in whatever season.
Yeah, different situations.
But also, it reminds me when you said the only way out is through. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
That triggered a memory. My mom, we lost my dad very unexpectedly back in 2012, and they'd been married 30 plus a lot of years. And she, in the months following, she said, when we were just having a talk and talking about just her missing him, that she felt like the Lord had told her that the grief she was feeling, just her grief that she had to walk through it and not around it. And that if she walked around it, then she wasn't I guess she wasn't going to experience, I think she said, experience what he has for her and the healing and the joy and the restoration. But walking through is a lot harder at the time than walking around something. That was something just a profound, I guess, thing that she got that I have taken to heart with moving forward, even losing her.
It's very, very similar to this. I mean, I can look back on this now and know how the story went. And, you know, my destiny was tied into me being at Donaldson. And honestly, I would not be sitting here talking to you had I not went through that. And I don't want to spoil the next couple episodes because, I mean, there's a lot of good stuff that happened later. But I just had to do it. And so the next time they came around, I said, I can't do this anymore. I surrender.
So that's what it was all about? You were there because you hadn't, like, surrendered to come out of the lockdown situation?
Yeah.
Really?
Much. Well, I put in for a transfer.
Okay.
But when you put in for a transfer, they don't have, they do what they want to do. And this story, that's not just my story. That's the story of thousands of men that are locked up in the Alabama Department of Corrections. They bury you, and they don't care. And you don't matter. You're nothing.
So they came back around, and you said basically, okay, I accept that I'm here.
I took my request for a transfer. If you cancel that, I got to get out of here. Because I'd done nothing wrong. I was not in lockup for a disciplinary problem. Mm-hmm. So it was crazy. It was crazy. But during that season, I mean, I received so much. I received healing. I received knowledge. I received forgiveness. I learned how to extend forgiveness, all while nothing I could see made any sense. And I just kept going, kept leaving. I kept digging. But in the end, you know, I've always been a fighter, you know. Well, you know that.
Oh, I know. I mean, we talked about, we got in a fight the other day, and I said, when it boils down to it, just hit me. You know, people are either fight or flight in situations. Yeah. Like, both of us will fight. So there will be no flighting in Team Jones.
Yeah, we're gonna push it. We're gonna do that. But I learned that the fight that I had to fight now, the battle that I had to fight, was a fight that I didn't understand. I had to battle the desire to protect myself, and just to allow Jesus to protect me, and He did. And that was hard. I mean, it's easy to say that on the other side, but it was so hard. That was so hard. And I did it scared to death. I did it afraid. I was still scared. It was not like my fear was gone, but like fear is like that. When you do something, when you're conquering a fear, you don't conquer it by waiting until you don't feel scared anymore. You conquer it by doing it. So I did it afraid. Mm-hmm. And I guess that needs to be the end of this episode. But in the next episode, we'll talk about going to Donaldson again, how it accepted my fate, just what was next.
Yeah,
I'm in the big house.
I'm very curious to hear round 2, because round 1 was a doozy. All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening, and
thanks for tuning in.
Anything else you want to add?
No.
All right, we'll see you next time.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Hey, guys, thanks so much for tuning in to the Straight Outta Prison podcast. For more exclusive content, head over to our website, teamjones.co/podcast.
Yes, you can subscribe by clicking on the Become a Patron button, and that's going to get you access to our For Real Reel, which is very different than the highlight reel. Some very juicy content there.
Good stuff. Or you can look us up on Facebook and Instagram, Straight Outta Prison Podcast.
Yes, that takes the story to a whole new level, where you can see some of the people that James talks about in his story and see some of the places that he's been. I've been loving it, and you will too.
Prison recipes.
Yeah, all the things.
Good stuff. We'll see you soon, guys.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye. Getting anything out of these videos, please hit the like button, the subscribe. If you never want to miss a recipe or anything I do, hit the little bell and you'll get notifications. I'm excited to be shooting another basics video, and in this one I want to talk about spices. It's questions I get from people all the time. Salt, pepper, you know, the things that I use, the things you can use. One of the most asked questions I get is, James, how do you make your food taste so good? I say, because I know how to cook. But the truth is, you just have to know how to use your spices. But I was just going to share on this video just what I do. If you know how to season your food, great. If you don't, I'm just going to show you the things I use. Let's get at it. All right, so probably the most important place to start is just with salt and pepper. But these days, there's all kinds of salt. There's sea salt, there's designer salt. You can get confused. I just, basically the bottom line to salt, it's all sea salt. All the salt that we have comes from a place where at one time the sea was. So that's how the salt got there to start with. So when you get into the designer salts and the different things that you can come up with, at the end of the day, salt is salt. And if it's salty, then it's going to salt your food.
Welcome to the... I'm sick now. I'm not going to do the 10 on this because my iPad function. Okay, it's going to die really bad.